The afternoon sun hung high over the VIP motocross event, its golden rays gleaming against the chrome and lacquer of the luxury bikes lined in perfect rows beneath the grand marquee. Amidst the hum of elite conversations and the echo of clinking champagne flutes, a modest figure entered, stepping tentatively over the threshold, a woman defined by practicality and grit rather than fashion or wealth. Zoe Turner moved with quiet resolve in her muddied riding gear, scuffed boots, dirt-streaked jacket, and her sweat-stained cap slightly askew. Her attire was a stark contrast to the opulent wardrobes of those gathered, whose spotless designer outfits seemed untouched, either by dust or by actual engagement with the sport they had come to spectate. As Zoe surveyed the sparkling scene, her senses were overwhelmed by the unexpected blend of opulence and the familiar scent of engine oil that clung to the machines on display. Her arrival did not go unnoticed. Heads turned, eyes, both curious and critical, latched onto her with thinly veiled disdain. The whispers started quickly, hushed tones carrying behind poised hands, painting her as a stark anomaly in their world of polish and privilege. Marissa, the event's gatekeeper dressed in sleek, corporate professionalism, regarded her with the kind of contempt reserved for those she deemed beneath the refined experience she curated. Her eyes drifted disdainfully toward Zoe's muddied boots, the battered backpack slung over her shoulder, framing this newcomer as a blemish amidst her meticulously orchestrated event. Nearby, a pompously dressed gentleman snorted, his voice carrying as he carelessly assumed, she must be lost or part of the setup crew. Certainly doesn't belong here with the guests. His remarks, laced with condescension, elicited a wave of chuckles and affirming nods from those around him, reinforcing Zoe's status as the outsider. Zoe felt the weight of the stares but kept her chin up, her heart pounding in her ears. Her eyes met those of Marissa, the poised receptionist who approached with an air of condescending authority. Marissa's voice was smooth, yet laced with a veneer of forced professionalism. "Excuse me," she began, a tight smile barely masking her disdain, "are you lost? This section is exclusive to invited guests and VIP associates." Zoe, refusing to be intimidated, returned her gaze with steady composure. "I'm here to enjoy the event like everyone else," she replied evenly, resisting the impulse to apologize or justify her presence. "I just finished a muddy session and wanted to take a look at the new bike models." Marissa's eyes flickered with irritation, her smile sharpening into something more dangerous. "Well," she said, her voice pitched loud enough for others to hear, "this isn't a pit stop in the middle of a dirt track. We maintain certain standards of appearance here. You'll have to either leave or remain in your circle, where you belong." The insinuation hung in the air like a noxious cloud, drawing derisive laughter from their surroundings. Several onlookers around shifted to film the interaction, whispering exaggerated comments. "What's a mud monster like her doing here?" one guest snickered to his companion, who was already fiddling with her phone to capture Zoe's image. "I can't believe she had the nerve to touch that bike." Zoe stood frozen, feeling the strings of mortification tugging sharply at her confidence. The light of countless phone screens illuminated her face, creating halos in her vision. Her heart raced, her skin flushing with a mix of anger and humiliation. She bit her lip, forcing herself to maintain a semblance of calm as every instinct told her to flee from this place, to retreat from these strangers who eyed her like an alien. Marissa gestured towards security, her manner imperious as she commanded them to escort Zoe away. However, the guards hesitated, perhaps taken aback by the unfolding scene or caught by some silent judgment of whether to really act based solely on Marissa's say-so. Standing on the periphery of this upscale tent, Zoe felt more isolated than ever. The loud, mocking laughter seemed the only constant, an underscore drumming through her veins, highlighting her plight as the subject of derision. It was clear no one intended to intervene or offer her the smallest gesture of solidarity or empathy. All pretense of casual enjoyment evaporated, Zoe swallowed painfully, casting a wide-eyed glance around the lavish tent. Everything seemed to blur together, the sleek lines of the motorcycles, the elegant chatter of the guests, all obscured by the hazy sheen of unshed tears. Yet she stood firm, refusing herself the escape of turning away despite the squeezing pressure in her chest. Silence punctuated the laughter for a moment, as the group nearest her considered her reaction with what might have been morbid curiosity, watching to see if she'd crumble, confirm their prejudices that someone like her didn't belong in their cultivated world of luxury and exclusivity. She remained planted, clinging to an inner core of dignity, her presence unequivocally real amidst doubts of belittlement. A final sneer passed between Marissa and another employee, their shared look one of victory claimed, an undeserved triumph carved at Zoe's expense. The surrounding chatter began to swell once more, background buzz reclaiming its domain as people drifted back into their cliques and dialogues, momentarily distracted by yet another minor scandal. Zoe was left on the figurative stage, peripheral to grandeur but centered in her defiance. Her solitude was penetrated by not a single voice raised in her support, merely more glances, more whispers veiled poorly, a searing backdrop to her isolated stand. It was a superficial fix to a deeper divide, one that branded her outsider by the golden standards of an insular world. Caught in this moment, Zoe pondered how a place that should celebrate the shared thrill of racing, the allure of the machines they all admired, could become a gauntlet when faced with biases as easy as a cliché and as suffocating as elitism. Even if she wouldn't allow herself to yield to these pressures, the mark of this moment left its trace, a burn for every future step she'd take, a motivation she could barely fathom yet but knew she must channel to redefine her path. The question lay not in whether she could belong here but in her own understanding of why she desired to. Her resolve was unyielding, and if she couldn't yet articulate how she'd turn her standing around, she'd start by stomping the venom of disparagement into fuel. Something surfaced beneath her hurt, a sturdy anticipation brewing, a knowing held in silence, fleeting but for all its transient nature, entirely vital. As the mocking voices dimmed into the backdrop of murmured remnants, Zoe inhaled deeply, shuddering briefly the tumultuous eruptions within. Underpinning the surface insult lingered a current, undeterred by enforced limitation, readying not for fight but for fulfillment. Once Marissa returned to her polished station at the foot of the display tent, she allowed herself a quiet moment of self-satisfaction, tidying a loose strand of hair from her face as she congratulated herself on curating a seamless event once more. Beside her, another hostess, Clara, offered an approving nod that only deepened Marissa's internal validation. "You handled it perfectly," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible over the renewed hum of elite chatter rolling through the tent. Marissa nodded with a tight smile, the look shared being one of mutual disdain for those who didn't measure up to the strict exclusivity they both enforced. To Marissa, these moments affirmed her belief in the necessity of gatekeeping, preserving what she believed purity, ensuring that what she deemed undesirables, those lacking polish, prestige, or propriety, learned their place. Her core philosophy circled around protection, a curated image free from perceived taint or tarnish, a quirky adherence to refined rules of inclusion. Elsewhere within the tent, laughter and familiarity threaded conversations over expensive champagne and canapés. The incident quickly became a part of the rhythm, transforming into anecdote and whispered gossip for those in attendance, a tale discreetly peppering exchanges with amusement or scorn as appropriate. It wasn't long before the atmosphere resumed its earlier sophistication, an irony-infused normalcy crested by floors gleaming beneath the meticulously polished shoes of high society throngs. Zoe, still lingering on the edges of this world that had tried to push her away, sought solace from within, tending to the surge of emotions ready to overtake her. She isolated herself in the quiet recess of her mind, holding herself with an internal brace forged of equal parts stubbornness and resilience. While she appeared outwardly composed, the trembling in her fingers and the tension in her jaw betrayed the effort beneath, parts of herself cooling from the sting and tightening resolve into a tempered moment of reprieve. In the middle of attempting to gather her thoughts amidst stray glances and whispers flung like arrows, an unexpected development unfolded. An event assistant, recognizable by his sleek uniform and authoritative air, wove through the crowd. He held something in his hands, a matte black helmet, distinguished by a unique emblem drawn with expert precision on its side. Scanning the tent, he called out, his voice yielding a clear note of urgency that rose above idle conversations. "Zoe Turner," he queried, his tone commanding attention, though confusion tinged his professional demeanor. Hearing her name brought unexpected clarity. Zoe raised her hand tentatively. As the assistant approached, handing her the helmet with respect and earnestness, murmurs coursed through the crowd, drawing intrigued eyes and attention to this unfolding development. Compliments of the organizer, he continued, offering the helmet with a nod. The transformation was immediate. Silence descended sharply among the guests, confusion blossoming across their faces as they watched the exchange. Suspicion turned nervousness, curiosity dangling on thin ice as the elite observed, each trying to read between non-existent lines, wondering if an error had been made, or if perhaps they had underestimated this muddy presence among their sleek, polished gathering. The unexpected stamp of legitimacy, tangible and visible to all, rippled doubt among the secure confines of the VIP tent. Perceived superiority teetered on the brink of realization as assumptions painted in broad strokes began to smudge. Curiosity was quickly replacing certainty, eyes fastened on Zoe as she held the helmet, its emblem catching glints of light and reflecting an elevated truth none had dared to consider moments earlier. In the circle of luxury and abundance, the scene quietly shifted, recalibrating the previous judgment in the face of newfound respect, intrinsic yet unspoken. The world inside, so certain moments passed, hesitated, paused as the notion of something more significant played out before them. The placement of this spotlight, unplanned and foreboding, challenged the foundation on which silent hierarchies had rested, inviting witness and awakening idle consideration. Zoe felt the atmosphere around her transform, charged with the promise of recognition she had arrived neither seeking nor avoiding. She tightened her grip on the helmet as glances shifted from aversion to questioning regard. Yet beneath the crowd's inquest lay an undercurrent, one Zoe was familiar with, the emergence of potential beyond its confining limits. Meanwhile, Marissa watched from her station with a mix of unsettled suspicion and involuntary awe. The helmet's presence bore intrusion upon her open disdain, demolishing the bedrock of her judgment as quietly as a tide over sand. Furtive glances toward Clara broke the unspoken tension, an unvoiced query asking if maybe, just maybe, she had miscalculated. But Clara herself was absorbed entirely by the unfolding tableau, not meeting Marissa's gaze. Zoe stood at the convergence of eyes, the epicenter of reluctant acknowledgments and unsaid admissions, each observing person braced for revelation or validation. Inside, tensions began to unwind, the latent strength of endurance smoothing the rough edges of prior confrontation with cautious triumph. There was no vindication here, only the advancing shadow of truth poised to upend the ill-fated culmination of preconceived perceptions. The nothingness of what had passed tightened to suspense, now tracing towards a shifting culmination, the confirmation awaiting, inevitable in its embrace. Zoe's heart stilled to the drum of possibility, and with it, the atmosphere awaits narrative's turn. Through a lens of authenticity, she sensed the solidity of her ground, spectral yet resilient, firm where it had once felt only fragile. As Zoe held the elegant piece of equipment aloft, a spotlight symbolizing more than acknowledgement, realization rippled forth. She knew that events such as these needed no external shapers, it built itself through the simple truths revealed within, truths she understood must be articulated through action, outstripping spoken word. Her heart steadying in her chest, she prepared herself, for revelation lay on the horizon, poised to turn expectation towards reality, the once separate visions of perception merging into unprecedented clarity. The air within the lavish tent was thick with anticipation, an electrified silence settling over the guests as they watched Zoe with new interest. The assistant, whose authority anchored his presence, stepped forward to address the gathering. His voice, firm and clear, cut through the tension that had weaved itself amongst the whispered assumptions and delicate scattered conversations. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, drawing their collective focus. "Allow me to introduce Zoe Turner, a distinguished professional motocross champion and the lead designer behind our exclusive custom bike collection showcased today." A gasp fluttered through the room, rippling in waves as jaws slackened and eyes widened in disbelief. The guests' murmurs weren't just sounds, they were layers of incredulity, unraveling the neat reality they thought they'd understood. Marissa, standing frozen at her station, eyes wide and unseeing, could barely process the gravity of the moment. The shock paralyzed her, her perfectly composed facade crumbling under the weight of her misjudgment. Unable to maintain their indifference, guests glanced at each other, seeking validation in the company of shared astonishment. Phones slipped forgotten to their sides as they processed the revelation that the woman they had so blithely dismissed was indeed the mastermind of the event's centerpiece collection. Zoe Turner stood calmly at the epicenter of this upheaval, the serene pivot on which their assumptions turned inside out. Her face, resolute and composed, held no malice, only a reassuring dignity that commanded the space, transforming the resentment and derision into reluctant respect. Her muddy attire, long the target of scrutiny and derision, now told a story of dedication, of hands-on expertise exercised in the trenches rather than served from an office chair. One by one, the guests found themselves transfixed. Their earlier judgments gave way to curiosity, a need to fill in the gaps in their understanding of the woman before them. And as they watched her, they saw not an outsider, but an embodiment of the sport's essence, a spirit grounded not in sartorial elegance but in skill, passion, and authenticity that set Zoe Turner apart. With the helmet in hand, Zoe took a moment before she addressed the crowd. Her voice, steady and warm, carried over the hushed audience. "Thank you," she said simply, glancing briefly at the rows of bikes that now gleamed under more deliberate gazes. "I've spent my life immersed in this world, perfecting both my craft and my rides, and what I stand for, the joy and passion inherent in this sport, infuses these designs." There was a softening within the group, perceptible in the softened lines of their faces, in the slight nods of those who recognized the alignment of her meaningful simplicity with their shared pursuit of excellence. Zoe continued, her presence uncompromising yet gentle. "For me," she went on, "it's never been about the appearance or the labels others would attach. It's about embracing the grit behind every rev of an engine, the dirt under fingernails that tells stories of adventures lived firsthand. Being here, as myself, uncurtailed, unchanged, is a reflection of that." Nods became more pronounced, and Izan, a renowned sports journalist attending the event, caught Zoe's gaze, his industry intuition piqued by her unique blend of expertise and humility. Moreover, whispers of appreciative awe spread softly through the assembled people. They recognized in Zoe a reflection of where true artistry met experience, beyond glittering exteriors and cultivated structures of prestige. The unspoken acknowledgement of her virtue extended beyond the professional scope. Guests understood implicitly that Zoe's presence transcended the limitations of attire. Her acceptance showcased unwavering confidence and a refusal to be assimilated by the opulent facade. Aside from the guests, certain apologies came suffused with sincerity, some guests approaching Zoe, faces flushed with contrition, quick to amend their earlier missteps with stammered attempts at redeeming this social stumble. Others, yet too insular to face the music, remained in awkward detachment, averting their gazes as if to erase evidence of their misjudgment. Marissa, meanwhile, found herself stranded within the tidal shift, her station as gatekeeper now reserved only with teeth-baring regret, for she could not ignore the repercussions born of her miscalculation. The realization of her error encased her petty reasoning in a mantle of shame, each misstep laid bare beneath an unwanted illumination. Zoe, however, chose to focus on those who approached her, offering smiles and brief exchanges that further disarmed the patronizing division once so keenly leveled against her. Her sincerity was unmistakable, woven into each interaction with a measured grace and compassion that left lasting impressions on those she engaged. Each moment she spent amongst them dismantled lingering walls of suspicion. Her values, a seamless merger of human authenticity with technical mastery, imbued the prestigious event with a new dynamism, a relatability previously absent from the gilded standard it presented. As Zoe prepared to move about, concluding her brief yet powerful oration, the atmosphere resonated with a newfound admiration, a shift from exclusivity to inclusiveness underscoring the congregated faces now reflecting genuine interest. Though never gloating, her presence revealed dual lessons, of humility and recognition underscored by an intrinsic elegance that needed no external polish to communicate its profound sincerity. Her words, nearing conclusion, hung in its rarefied air, their truths both unmistakable and valuable, understood far beyond the barriers of perception. "I thank you for welcoming me," she concluded, her words marrying grace and might, without sacrificing integrity, "and I hope these designs inspire you as much as the journey continues to inspire me." With her purpose expressed and her place understood, Zoe motioned towards the exit, leaving behind murmurs of appreciation and the heavy weight of collective recognition. In her wake, she left a reconceived world, rare and evocative for its synthesis of raw elegance, elevated by those immeasurable qualities she embodied beyond fashion, beyond assumption, forming the true essence of distinction among the glamour of interpretation. As Zoe's words lingered in the air, the crowd's undercurrent shifted towards her with a quiet reverence and newfound respect. Marissa, at the fringes of this transformed tableau, stood rooted in place, unable to ignore the stark contrast between her actions and the reception Zoe now undeservedly basked in. Her earlier satisfaction dissipated into cold regret, her confidence shattered by her own hastily built assumptions. The organizer, a charismatic figure known for his affable yet firm leadership, stepped forward, addressing the assembly with an assuring presence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared with authority, "let this be a reminder of the quality we aim to celebrate, achievements earned through passion and dedication, just as Zoe Turner exemplifies. We are better for her presence and her contribution, and she is warmly welcomed." His words hung in the air like a moral decree, a subtle yet profound reprimand aimed at those, including Marissa, who had misjudged Zoe's presence. The applause that followed was a standing ovation in solidarity and concurrence, acknowledgement of a lesson learned in humility. The guests applauded not only Zoe's accomplishments but also the resilience she had exhibited in the face of dismissiveness. With the organizers' nod of approval and the atmosphere finally at ease, conversations resumed, now animated with genuine interest and curiosity, the earlier tension all but melted away. Guests gathered around the motorcycles with newfound appreciation, observing each machine with the insight imparted by Zoe's quiet wisdom. The event transformed, shedding its polished veneer for a more authentic celebration of shared passion and camaraderie. Marissa could feel the growing distance from her previous status as the gatekeeper. As she tried to regain composure, the organizer approached her, eyes stern but not without empathy. "This isn't just about appearances," he addressed her in a carefully measured tone. "We were wrong to judge. It's a mistake we shouldn't repeat. Take this as a learning moment, one that will shape you." Marissa nodded, chastened but grateful for the opportunity to grow. She could sense the whispers, not of admiration but of a lesson source, a catalyst that nudged her towards personal reflection. It was evident her role required change, acknowledgement of oversight, and a commitment to embracing a broader, more inclusive perspective. As the event wound down, Marissa noticed a softer, less formal gathering forming around Zoe. The improvised meet and greet brimmed with energy as guests, eager to hear more, surrounded Zoe. Conversations ebbed insistently toward her insights, design process, and her storied career. It was as though they leaned on her experiences to enrich their own understanding of the sport. Zoe met their inquiries with warmth, attentive and open, each exchange a window into the ethos she embodied. The event's grandeur now resonated with authentic engagement, the warmth of lively conversation, and sincere exchanges filling the elaborate canopy. The motorcycles gleamed not only with polish but with a mood of genuine appreciation, perceived through a lens newly crafted by honest interpretation. That night, as the last of the guests slowly filtered out into the cool evening, a sense of fulfillment hung over the venue. What had begun as an exclusive showcasing had transformed into a celebration of what truly mattered, a commonality of passion, skill, and integrity. Zoe's influence had shifted perspectives, prompting self-evaluation among those who had once ridiculed her. Marissa, humbled and introspective, stood apart from the dissolving crowd as she watched Zoe slowly make her way toward her branded truck parked nearby. Nerves tingling with a mix of lingering embarrassment and resolution, Marissa approached Zoe, her steps hesitant yet determined. "Miss Turner?" Marissa began, her voice tentative but sincere. "I wanted to sincerely apologize for my behavior earlier. I misjudged you, and I'm truly sorry." Zoe turned, meeting Marissa's gaze with composure, her eyes reflecting strength tempered by empathy. "Thank you," she replied, her tone gentle and understanding. "We all have lessons to learn. I appreciate your honesty." Marissa nodded, both relieved and grateful for Zoe's grace. This moment of genuine reconciliation washed some of the bitterness away, dissolving the weight of missteps within its simplicity. As Marissa stepped aside to let Zoe pass, she understood now that the event's value was enriched not by exclusivity but by the depth of connections formed and the authenticity celebrated. She had learned more than expected, realizing transformation required change beyond surface engagements, a new understanding punctuated by the impact of Zoe's presence. With the moon rising high and the stars glinting above, Zoe climbed into her truck, the engine purring to life with a familiar hum that grounded her spirit. She paused briefly, gazing back at the scene behind her, knowing what she had achieved extended beyond accolades or superficial affirmations. It was about the influence each of us could wield by staying true to oneself. As Zoe drove away from the venue, her silhouette framed by the cab's rearview mirror, she carried with her not just the achievements celebrated but the implicit shift she had inspired. Others watched her departure, captivated by the quiet legacy she left behind, a resonant memory of dignity and strength guiding the event into a future forever altered in its substance and understanding. In the rippling echo of her absence, a renewed sense of purpose lingered, a reminder woven into the fabric of those still present, igniting within them an indelible commitment to embrace authenticity, to value the diversity of identity that brings us together in shared passion.